My name is Laura, and this is my 2-year-old daughter, Talia, and just 8 months ago, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. The summer before Talia was diagnosed, she was very thirsty, and we didn't think too much of it because it was summer and it was hot, so she was drinking, and that was good. Then we noticed that her diapers were getting fuller and fuller, and because she's only 2, we didn't think too much of it because she was drinking more water, so her diapers were fuller. That sort of made sense. I did know that excessive thirst was a symptom of type 1 diabetes from a friend, and it was on my radar. But I thought, how could this happen to us? There's no family history. I'm probably just being a protective mom. So I kept paying attention to her water intake, and it continued to increase. And I kept paying attention to the wetness of her diapers. And her diapers were getting so wet that the outside of the diaper was saturated. And I can remember one time getting her from nap where she asked for a cup of water, and I filled it right to the top. She chugged the whole thing back and asked for more. So at that point, I was thinking this was excessive thirst. This was not normal. The pediatrician's office thought that maybe it was just a phase and there was nothing to worry about. And when things continued to progress so that she was filling 3 diapers throughout the night and she was having a hard time falling asleep and being comfortable, that's when I said it was time and we needed to test her for this so that I could put my mind at ease. So once we went to the pediatrician's office, I handed over the sample that we collected at home because this happened in September during the height of the second wave of COVID-19 in Ottawa. Things were happening a little bit different. The nurse with a big smile took the urine sample and with no smile came back and said, "The doctor would like to see you." The doctor said that we needed to go to CHEO, which is the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, for further testing to confirm the diagnosis. He wouldn't say at that point that it was type 1. We got to the hospital. There was a long line of people ahead of us. And I should mention that because it was COVID-19, the policy at CHEO was only one parent could go. So I had to go on my own with my 2-year-old. And once we got to the triage nurse, I told her what had happened, that we came from the pediatrician. They took a blood sample and checked Talia's blood glucose level. She immediately picked up the phone and said, "We need to get this girl a room." So we saw the ER doctor really shortly after that. They hooked her up to an IV and they took 2 vials of blood for testing. And she asked why I came in, and I said, "I'm here because I think my daughter has type 1 diabetes." And at that point, still no one had confirmed it for me. And I'll never forget what she said. She looked me square in the eye. She got down to my level and she said, "Your daughter has type 1 diabetes. This is going to change your lives forever. There is no cure, but with insulin, it can be managed." My initial reaction was just pure devastation. I was devastated that my sweet little 2-year-old girl was going to have all of these issues and complications and just hurdles ahead of her. In the beginning, we looked at it as a life sentence, not a death sentence, and we were grateful for that, but it was still a life sentence. And we were just gutted. We were devastated for her. No parent wants that for their child. And then the secondary feeling was just relief that we had answers, relief that we knew what it was and we knew how to go forward with it. But just pure devastation. The learning curve for us, once we found out that Talia had type 1 diabetes, was astronomical. Because of COVID-19, there were no programs where nurses would come to our home to give needles before meals, which was their standard practice before COVID-19. So when we left the hospital, I had a crash course in type 1 diabetes. I needed to learn how to check her blood sugar. I needed to learn how to deliver insulin through injections. I was taking her home in minutes, and then I needed to teach my husband everything. So I really needed to make sure that I knew as much as I could. I asked all the questions I could think of to make sure that when we got home and when we were on our own, we were going to do our best by Talia. In the beginning, Talia required a needle of insulin before each meal, but also one long-acting insulin for the whole day. So she required a minimum of 4 needles a day. And it was awful to try and get a 2-year-old to take a needle. In the beginning, it took 2 of us. My husband would hold her down and I would get the needle in her. And we quickly realized that this was not sustainable. We didn't want this to be the battle of the wills, but at the same time, there was no negotiations. She needed the insulin and she needed it when she needed it. So we started with a sticker chart every time she got a needle or a finger poke to check her blood sugar. We gave her a sticker, and then we sort of progressed to any time she did it without wiggling and without fighting, she got a sticker. And that really helped. The other thing that I struggled with just as a mom was knowing that I was doing harm. I was hurting her by giving her the insulin. The needle did not feel good, but she needed the needle to live. And so I had this conflict in myself. And so early on, each time I gave her a needle, I said, "You are brave, you are strong, and you are loved." It was really important for me that she knew that even though we were causing her pain, that she was still loved and that we were so proud of her. And then as we progressed in our journey, I had her repeat after me. And so she would say, "I am
brave.
I am
strong.
I am
Loved."
That's right. You did a great job today and I'm so proud of you." Talia also adjusted really well. It was amazing to watch her sort out the emotions and everything that was going around her through her play. So she received a stuffed monkey, a stuffed animal from the hospital named Coco, who has type 1 diabetes. She has a backpack filled with all of the supplies that you need, an insulin pen, a logbook. So sometimes before we would give Talia her insulin, we would give Coco insulin, and that helped Talia to understand what was going on.
If it's 4.8, she doesn't eat juice.
That's right. If it's 4.8, she will not need juice. That's right. Can you give Coco some insulin? You show us how to do it? In her foot? That's a funny place for insulin. No. In her arm? That's a good idea. That's good.
Take the cap off.
What do you say to Coco after she has her insulin?
She has. I have to read the book.
Gonna write in the book?
It's low.
Is it low?
Yeah.
Oh, if she's low, then maybe she needs a snack. And then Talia took it one step further, and many of her stuffed animals had type 1 diabetes, and she would pretend to give blood checks to family members and to the animals, and it was amazing to watch her do exactly the steps that we did with her. She really understood. It allowed her to make sense of all of these changes that were going on in her life. If you didn't know that Talia had type 1, you would never know. She looks and she plays just like all of the other kids. And that is a source of strength for my husband and I, because, you know, when you look at her and when you see that she's just like everyone else, it makes it easier. So we still have days where we're sad that this is her life and that it's going to be harder in some ways. But to see how she's just gone through as if you know, not that much has changed, it's amazing. And it just shows that she is so strong. When Talia was little, as young as 6 months old, I used to say that she was a firecracker and that she was feisty, and it was frustrating at times. But I used to say to myself, there will be a time when I'm so grateful that she has these characteristics. And I was thinking it would happen when she's 16 or when she's 20 or later down in her life. And I never expected that it would be when she was 2 that I would be grateful that she is full of spunk and full of zest, because this is hard and you wouldn't know to look at her. There are a few things that I would love people to know more about type 1 diabetes, and some things that I wish I had known a bit more before the diagnosis entered our family. I wish that people understood the difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. So with type 1 diabetes, for whatever reason, the immune system attacks the pancreas and the beta cells are no longer able to produce insulin. It has nothing to do with diet. It has nothing to do with the amount of sugar that you eat. It's just, for us, it was bad luck. We don't know what triggered diabetes in Talia, but we are a healthy family that always limited sugar. My husband rolled his eyes every time I diluted juice on the rare occasions that my kids would get juice. So when people say things like, oh, this dessert is diabetes on a platter, not only is that perpetuating stereotypes that are untrue, that can be hurtful to someone who has type 1, who has it for no reason, but in our case, bad luck. Insulin has saved us. Before the discovery of insulin, if children were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, they would live 2 years if they were lucky. That means we would be burying a 4-year-old. And that thought is unfathomable. So insulin has saved my daughter's life. It has saved our family. And it has allowed us to watch her grow old, which is now something that we don't take for granted. We feel really privileged to have the opportunity to have 2 beautiful children and to watch them grow up, and that's because of insulin. If I could speak to Dr. Banting today, I would thank him for his generosity. A lot of people don't know that once he discovered insulin, he sold his patent to the University of Toronto for just $1. He could have made so much money on this discovery, but instead he said, insulin doesn't belong to me, insulin belongs to the world. And I think if more people and more researchers and if society in general just had that mentality, we would be in a better place. So I applaud him for that. But more than anything, I just say thank you. Thank you for saving my daughter's life. Thank you for allowing her the chance to grow old and to run around with her brother and just to live her best life.